Welcome to the CMO Spotlight. I have with me today Stacey Tank, who's the Chief Transformation and Global Affairs Officer for Heineken. Welcome, Stacey.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. And Stacey, this is a little bit unique for the CMO Spotlight because you're coming to us live from Amsterdam, Netherlands.
That is right. Hello, or I
Hello.
would say goedemorgen.
I was going to say, you don't have a Dutch accent. So where are you originally from, Stacey?
Yeah, the Finger Lakes, upstate New York. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, but
Well,
the first American to ever sit on the executive committee of Heineken. So that's a fun,
wow,
yeah, and
that's really cool.
157 years.
So I want to hear about Heineken a little bit, and I want to hear about your journey to the current role. I know you did a stint at Heineken previous in your career, and then you came back to Heineken, and you've also lived internationally before your stint in the Netherlands. So maybe just start by telling us really briefly about Heineken as an organization. I know it's a huge global company, but tell us a little bit about the company.
Sure, we're a 157-year-old brewer, the second largest brewer in the world, and we always think the most international. We were founded by Gerard Adrian Heineken in 1864. He was 22 years old. He actually had to become an emancipated miner to be able to acquire the brewery after his father passed away. Yeah, he was a cheese trader, and so Gerard was exposed to business, and he wanted to do his own thing, and he brought this a kind of semi-dilapidated brewery called the Haystack. And Gerard, and then Henry Pierre, then Freddie Heineken, and now Charlene Heineken have always been the largest shareholders in the company. So we're publicly traded, but our largest shareholder remains independently the Heineken family to this day.
Wow. Wow. So it's still a family business after 150-ish years. Amazing. And obviously you operate in most every country in the world. I think on all the continents, maybe except for Antarctica.
I don't think we're in Antarctica. That's probably maybe we're imported there. I don't know.
Right. Certainly imported. Absolutely, you're there. It's just a question of I don't think you have a brewery there or something like that.
I don't think so.
So excellent. So tell us. I know that previous to your most recent stint at Heineken and on the executive committee, you spent about 5 years in Atlanta at the Home Depot, and then 3 years at Heineken before that, and then you sort of began your career with almost 10 years at General Electric at GE. So just tell us about your career journey and how you ended up back in the role you're in now.
Absolutely. So I did start 10 years at GE and lived all over the world. They brought me to Brazil, to Monterey, Mexico, Mexico City, to Montreal and Toronto, living in Germany, in the UK, in France. So that it just really moved me around, and everything from doing acquisitions of television businesses in London with NBC Universal to holding enriched uranium in my hands in their nuclear business. To aircraft engines and MRI machines and consumer and commercial banks, commercial real estate, super conglomerate model at that time. And I worked in finance, I worked in their corporate audit staff, and then also in marketing and communications roles. So I had a lot of different kinds of experiences there and couldn't have had a better training ground the first 10 years. And then I was sitting on a board with a woman who was at dinner with the US CEO of Heineken at the time. And purely through serendipity, he said, I have this role open in my management team and I'm looking for this, this, this. And she said, do you know Stacey Tank? And he Googled me. So thanks, Google. Google's the reason.
Wow. Good to have a digital footprint then also for somebody to find you.
At that time, I'm not sure what my digital footprint might have been beyond LinkedIn, but yeah, he found me and reached out. And so I joined the management team at Heineken in the US. And then when Craig Menear was promoted to the CEO role at Home Depot, he reached out and invited me to join his team. And most recently, I was running some of their home services businesses. So we would renovate your kitchen, your windows, your doors, your floors, $2 billion business, and turned that business around and got it from shrinking double digits to growing double digits, and thought I would run businesses forever. I was so fulfilled by the experience. And then the gentleman, Dolph, who hired me at the business in New York, became the global CEO of Heineken. And he reached out in early 2020 and said, hey, we need to write this next growth chapter. We're going to transform the company and stand on the shoulders of those who came before us to add our part. And will you come lead the transformation, help us create and shepherd our new growth strategy, and make sure we then can operationalize it. And we said, absolutely. And moved the two boys and my husband, we moved over in the middle of the beginning of the COVID pandemic.
Wow.
From Atlanta to the Netherlands.
Wow. Well, so tell us just briefly about the role. So you're Chief Transformation and Global Affairs Officer, and you're sitting on the executive committee, first American to ever do that. So just tell us a little bit about like, what is your, you have a broad set of responsibilities in this role, but just tell us about some of them.
Sure. Yep. So when we all started, 9 of the 11 executive committee members are new. And so we really were a new team coming together. June 1st, 2020 was our CEO's first day as CEO, my first day. We're all jumping in. And the first thing we wanted to do was co-create a playbook, a growth playbook to go forward. And so we drafted a couple hundred, what we called evergreeners, because our strategy is called Evergreen, which is about continuous renewal. And we listened deeply to what was happening in the outside world. And then we articulated where we think we can grow and where we can better serve customers and consumers. And we created Evergreen with what we call 17 bold moves, or places that we want to focus. And now we're deepening and getting into execution mode. So what I focus on, a lot of my energy goes into how we're operationalizing Evergreen, and how can we, instead of being siloed, because we have 80 operating companies that are largely geographic. So the UK business, or the business in Sierra Leone, or the business in Vietnam, or, pick your country, it's largely country-based. Our countries worked pretty independently in the past. And now we know we can learn together, and we can share and scale faster and reduce duplication, all the basic things, if we work better together and we have visibility along the way, instead of just one or a few points during the year of how things are going against our ambitions beyond sales and margin and all those goodies that of course we could always see. So we created a transformation network across the world, and now we're helping to shepherd Evergreen forward. And then also our Brew a Better World Sustainability Responsibility Program and department, they roll up through the team: government affairs, public affairs, alcohol policy, global communication. So it's amazing. Every day there's a lot of variety of things to give time and attention to.
So you talked about kind of the transformation part of your role, and then the global affairs part of your role. I imagine you have a pretty large team that support those two different parts of your world. Is that true?
What's funny about teams, I don't know when this happened. At some point when the world got so fast and so complicated, it's like the boundaries dissolved. And
right.
We are like a rugby scrum, and whatever the challenge is, whoosh, we go there, whoosh, we go there.
Yeah.
So yes, there is a team, of course, they're awesome. And there's the transformation side and the other side with the sustainability and government affairs and communications folks together. But really, it's a deeply collaborative role across every function. And actually, if you ask what I do, what I think I do every day is deeply sense into the organization. How is it going with Evergreen? And then where we're stuck, or where the train, like a kid learning how to bicycle, which is on my mind because my 7-year-old not doing great on 2 wheels yet. I'm always
and biking culture is fairly large there in Amsterdam, so
it's huge, and I love it because all that stress of where am I going to park, it's gone. Just cycle it.
Right.
You get a little workout. It's wonderful. But I'm always sensing in where do we need to debottleneck, or where do we need to build capability, or where don't we have enough resource, and like a heat-seeking missile, go into those places and making sure that we fortify and support so that we can be successful at delivering Evergreen 2025.
Nice. I love it. So you talked a little bit about you've become certainly a global citizen. I mean, you've lived in so many different places, and I know, think very globally, and your role is a global role. It's not a just for Amsterdam, not for Europe, not for Americas. It's a global role. So talk about, the choice to live abroad as an American, and how you've been able to adapt to a lot of different cultures as you've moved around your career.
Absolutely. I've always been up for the adventure. Luckily, my family has been also in that mindset. So we kind of start with yes, and then you have those moments where you go, oh, this is
crap. There's implications of that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but we've always started from this energy of yes, and living all over the world gave me almost whet my appetite for having those adventures. And also you push yourself, you stretch yourself, you try to get yourself fully out of your comfort zone. And with the kids being the ages that they are, so I suppose Jack was 11 and 6 or 11 and 5 when we moved over. They're great ages to come here, be in this country where kids have so much freedom. My 12-year-old jumps on his bicycle, cycles to school. He can cycle to get ice cream with his friends. He can cycle to the grocery store. He can cycle to baseball. He can it's like having a car, basically. He has his own debit card because no one takes cash, and his iPhone. I mean, what else do you need in life, right?
Right. Wow. I'm jealous of him, I think.
He's really loving it. So I'm so glad for them to have the experience of being completely immersed here as well culturally, because we don't have any non-Dutch around us. We're in a Dutch neighborhood, fully in Dutch sports teams. In all of these, school is conducted in English, but there are no Americans, or very few. So we're getting the full sheep dip, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's been great.
So the whole family is learning to speak Dutch, I'm guessing, little by little.
Yeah, my 12-year-old is definitely exceeding at a faster rate. I'm keen to keep learning. I'm not all the way there yet. And then, we're not declaring success. Just
you're not in a rush, though. I mean, you can get there little by little. Excellent. So you mentioned that you held uranium in your hand, and I believe everybody has a superpower. You may have an actual, I don't know if you can shoot webs or superhuman strength or something like that. But I'm curious, beyond, physical superpowers from the uranium, what you believe your superpower is.
I went through a individual purpose journey about 10 years ago with this guy, Nick Craig, from the Core Leadership Institute in Boston. And we've worked together a bunch of times since then. We've worked, of course, on organizational purpose, but from an individual purpose perspective, my purpose is to ignite the worthy fight and blow your hair back. So there's some kind of, I don't know if that's the right answer to your question, but that's how I would say it.
If that's your purpose, then what makes you uniquely positioned to deliver on that purpose? Why is that your purpose and not somebody else's?
Yeah, the way my teams have described it back to me sometimes, it's that when the house is on fire and everyone's running out of the house, I'm running into the house, kind of thing, and going, all right, we can do this. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but I like to be in that zone where there's a giant problem. There's absolutely no answer. The clock is ticking. I like the challenge of it, and to push myself to see, hey, we can really make lemonade here out of lemons, but we're going to have to figure it out and keep our wits about us.
I love that. Well, and, running into the burning building when everybody else is running out takes guts. It takes, fortitude and wanting to address the issues. I once asked the same question to the CEO of MailChimp, who just sold his company for $12 billion to Intuit. And he said his superpower was he's able to put the turd on the table. And I loved that idea of taking difficult issues and addressing them head on, and not shying away from that. And I think that your superpower is a little bit similar, to be able to take things that are not easy and address them and try to solve them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm curious if there's a piece of advice that you wish that you'd gotten earlier in your career, or if there's a piece of advice you maybe would give to somebody that's just starting out their career or younger in their career.
I always was probably a little too serious, maybe until I hit my 30s. So one thing I would say to myself, if at my 16-year-old self or my 25-year-old self, is have fun. It's not a crime. Enjoy it, because
Yeah.
it does fast. I've always lived by the mantra of work hard. My parents are incredibly hardworking. They really instilled that in us. Work hard, be kind, be curious. If you have those things, you are going to thrive in life, and people are going to want to be in your ecosystem, and it'll all work out.
Okay, so for those of you listening, that was a huge amount of insight in a very short phrase, very short explanation. So go back and watch again and unpack that, because that's amazing. I appreciate that so much. Okay, so in your, I know that we've gone through some challenges as a society, as a world, and here in the States as a country, with global pandemic, and we've dealt with a lot as we're hopefully on the back end and emerging out of that. So I'm curious what you feel is your biggest challenge. From a beer sales perspective, I know initially during COVID, my assumption is that on-premise beer sales declined a little because people didn't want to walk into a bar and buy a beer. But then, grocery sales increased because people just had that beer at home instead of walking into the bar. But, so I'm imagining that that's all sort of normalized a little more for the business side of things. But I'm just curious, generally, as a communications professional, as one of your responsibilities, what has been one of the largest challenges that you've been facing today?
Yeah. On the business side, when the bars and restaurants are closed and your customers are hurting, it's no fun at all.
Yeah.
And
No.
the multi-speed world right now, where you have markets like the Netherlands that are wide open.
Yeah.
Enormously grateful for that. And then you have markets like Vietnam where the military is still delivering food and you
Wow.
can't leave your apartment. So it's a multi-speed world, and it'll be a lot more fun to be in this industry when the bars and restaurants are open. We keep those folks really in our thoughts. From an engagement perspective in general, with even a business lens, I really worry about polarized society. And the fact that not just in the States, not just in the UK, but I think broadly, and it's a more acute challenge in some places than others, but we're getting pretty quick to point our fingers at other people and not listen, not try to find shared ground. And I still believe as humans, we have a lot more that unites us than divides us. And we need to put the energy there.
Yeah.
We, the anti-vax movement, the unmask our children, I'm trying to push myself every day to engage in conversations with folks who I know on emotional topics, and pick your emotional topic: abortion, vaccination. I mean, these are really emotional, personal topics. Yeah. Engage with folks that have a different view than I have, and listen, and don't judge them, and get curious about how do they come to that view that they have. And a lot of times through those conversations, I've come to realize that we have a lot in common. And let's focus on those commonalities and respect each other, and also have an interest in shared facts. Because I think to be a functional society, we probably want to have a shared view of the facts and honor each other through dialogue, and respect that sometimes we're going to agree to disagree, but that's good. We shouldn't all have the same opinion on everything. We have to challenge each other. Stop vilifying. I really worry about what sign that is. What's that? Where are we going as humanity?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, that used to be reserved for war and only war, where your opponent was the enemy and they were evil and you were good, and your team is the good team and the other team is the bad team. And I 100% agree with you that we need to stop treating each other like the other team is the evil team.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then how we each role model that? How can I practice? How can I get better at doing that? How can I show others that it's safe and possible to even engage in those discussions, including in the workplace?
Yeah.
And, but it's a muscle we have to train, because it's scary even engaging on any of these topics, whether it's, Black Lives Matter movement and racial inclusion, or sexual harassment, Me Too movement, or, we have a lot of polarizing topics today, but we need to build the competency to have those discussions in the right way and not be afraid of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, because just ignoring that it's an issue is not going to move us forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we should, to your point, we should agree on facts, and unfortunately, the media has gotten a really bad rap for not delivering facts, and they're delivering audience instead of facts in some cases, and advertiser value versus truth. And so we just need to keep pushing towards what we know is right, which is, and what we know is true. So I appreciate that. So I'm curious where either you find inspiration, or where you find inspiration for your larger team.
Yes, we are always finding great examples of things happening in the world that we get curious about, and try to absorb or listen and learn from, especially things where you go, I'm not sure about that. Years ago, this must have been 10 years ago, I was in a board meeting and folks were talking about esports, and now there are stadiums being built, or there, YouTube channels or Twitch or whatever it is, where folks are watching other people play video games.
Oh, yeah.
I remember the first time I heard about that, and then I started to see my kids doing it, and my first reaction, I'm being just plainly honest about, was very judgmental.
Yeah.
I don't get
Why
it.
would you just watch somebody play a video game? Right.
So then I thought, well, I'm gonna watch, let me
Yeah.
see what it's about. And now I'm like, wow, actually, this is really entertaining.
Yeah.
I get it. At first I was embarrassed to say I get it, and now I
Right.
just get it. Sit with my kids and we watch them. So I expect the unexpected. Never say never. Be open-minded. I've restarted a tradition with my team now that we call Inspiration Friday, where I try to pick something up during the week, and then I share it on Friday morning at 9:00. And it can be lots of different things, from Brene Brown memes. Last week, it was a video about a kindergarten and children being asked to draw an astronaut, a firefighter, a doctor. And then those people walked in the room and they were all women, and the children had all drawn men. And,
Wow.
It's just things to help make us think. And it's amazing how many people write back and they have a thought on what was shared, but then they have something else that they want to put out into the community to push us to
Awesome.
think. It's just fun. Yeah.
Well, that's neat that it doesn't have to be you that's creating the inspiration for the team. They're inspiring each other.
Exactly. That's the very best way to get that ecosystem self-organizing, right? And spawning ideas on its own. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm curious you talked a little bit about this, but what are the values that you like to demonstrate as a leader, or what values do you demand in somebody that you would have on your team?
I think it's important to have shared values, and the company has a set of shared values that are, when you're hiring, when you're thinking about how we're behaving in the workplace, they're wonderful as a North Star. But beyond that, I've definitely learned over the years that everyone needs something a little bit different. So I try, of course, don't always get it right, but try to be really flexible in my style so that I can cultivate an environment where different folks with different styles and preferences can be themselves and really thrive. One of the questions I started asking myself a few years ago, going into every meeting with my team or a performance review or just a one-on-one or whatever, is how do I want this person or these people to feel after this meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Be more intentional about that. Because sometimes we need to inspire our teams. Sometimes we need to have more challenging discussions. Sometimes we need to have more honest discussions.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we need to have a more personal discussion or a more business-oriented discussion. And I thought more about that based on how I was feeling sometimes leaving meetings with my colleagues and thinking, wow, I really feel bad right now. I feel
Right.
motivated or completely devoid of energy or whatever it is. And then I think, is that how that should have gone? Am I supposed to be
Right.
feeling that? Is that a waste of my energy to feel, you know, sometimes yes, sometimes no, but I want to be intentional about that with my teams. And so I can also just support them the way that they need it. And ultimately, one of the best feelings in the world is a leader of a team, especially if you're creating something new together. In the beginning, your hands are in the soil and you're sweating and you're all in there and you're doing it. And then you hire the right folks and you get the folks in the right roles, responsibilities, the resourcing and the autonomy or whatever it is. And all of a sudden, you know, year 2, year 3, year 4, you can feel yourself stepping back and this amazing group of folks are just running their world. They're running their agenda and they've got momentum. And usually, by the way, that's when I know it's time to move on.
Wow.
Because they've got it, you know, and now it's time to go on another adventure.
Well, and so some of the things I think I heard from you, there has to be there's empathy there, right? To put yourself in the other person's shoes and understand their perspective. I heard that from you a couple of different times. There's self-awareness to know, where do I stand and how am I a part of this larger thing, you know? And then there's flexibility to cater your style to resonate with the person or team that you're, you know, you can't, if your style is rah, 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 you know, and jump in, and the rest of the team style is a little more passive and laid back, then you may not resonate well with that group and influence them in the right way.
Very true, indeed. And culture plays a huge role. You know, being in this super global company, we have folks from, you know, in my immediate team, folks from Singapore and folks from, you know, Africa and folks from Spain and just people from all over the world with very different cultural norms, and making sure that we can all understand each other sometimes is a challenge in and of itself, because some cultures are more direct, some cultures are more nuanced. Some cultures, like the Dutch culture, you don't give a lot of positive affirmation. And I am the queen of positive affirmation.
Right. So they look at you like you're crazy when you're given all this great positive affirmation, and then you're maybe missing it from others, right?
Big time. I have to turn my dial down. Sometimes I even picture it like that, like, okay, let's turn my positive, think of like the Richard Simmons of business sometimes, you know, like I'm going to dial that down a little bit and try to modulate.
I think I remember from your time at Home Depot, you were often, your persona was more Richard Simmons than probably it is in your current role at Heineken.
I think that that's true. And there's something about the Home Depot frontline associates that I will carry in my heart forever, because there is this, and it's an American cultural thing as well.
Right.
Incredible electric enthusiasm.
Right.
And in the American dream, which is I can have nothing. I can grow up in foster care. I can grow, you know, I can have a really hard beginning, and I can earn my way to a bright, bright, bright future. And some of the stories that I heard there were just pretty catalytic. So
I have a friend who changed his first name to Thor because there's a statue of Thor, and it's the self-made man, and it's the idea of, you know, that's a very American principle, I think, that the principle of reinvention, and that your past doesn't matter so much, you can build your future. And that may not be the same culture everywhere in the world. I know that's maybe, I don't know if that's uniquely American, but certainly it's part of the American. I have a really silly, not a silly question, but a little question, which is, I'm assuming you conduct most of your business in English, like even in a company like Heineken, that's a global company. When you're talking with colleagues in Singapore or other places, you're mostly conducting business in English?
Indeed, yes. Okay. But I would say on top of that, the Heineken colleagues are really linguistically gifted. So most people speaking 4 languages, you know, Spanish, French, English, and Dutch, and then many other, depending on where folks are from, Portuguese and Chinese and Vietnamese, plus, plus, plus. So, but thankfully, everybody is speaking English as well, which is a blessing as an Anglophone myself. So, but I'm always pushing myself too, because it's important for us to honor each other's cultures and languages and try. And living in Mexico and other places, I also love language. I find it's like a puzzle also that you have to figure out in your mind. So
I love that. So I'm going to shift gears a little. As you know, we're marketing matchmakers, and we exist to connect brands and agencies is one of the primary things we do. Back even when your days at the Home Depot, we connected you with some agency support. I'm curious generally how you work with, I know communications is a large part of your role. Do you work with communications agencies and such? And how do you work with agencies today?
We do work with some agencies. So on our research, we have third-party support on social listening and those types of things. We have agency support for crisis and issues for counsel. Although I would say hands on the steering wheel inside the company at all times on things like that, because it's very important to have counsel. But at the end of the day, you have to own the details. You have to own the decisioning, and not feel some kind of false sense of relief by outsourcing that. Production is often third party, although I like a hybrid model on production because sometimes you just need to go fast. I would say with agencies, though, my strong preference is always to work directly, hands-on, getting things done. I get a little bit, it can become like a game of telephone when you have a lot of people in the mix, and you can end up being a bit slow and bureaucratic. So we try to avoid that as much as we can. But largely my rule of thumb is if we don't have the expertise, we should get some help externally. And where we do have the expertise ourselves, we can run and drive ourselves.
Well, we often talk about here the reasons that brands or companies go for agency support usually, or there's a capacity issue where you just don't have enough arms and legs to do the execution of the ideas and whatever you're trying to accomplish, or a capability issue where you're missing some specific capability that you don't necessarily want or need to own in-house. So I'm curious, are there certain things, you sort of mentioned this, but are there certain things that you would never ever outsource, or certain things that you would always want to get that outside perspective on?
Yeah, I'm not an absolutes person, so I'm a never say never, but in general, strategy, those types of things, it's sometimes nice to have someone organizing things for you and looking outside. But I think the critical thinking has to be owned inside the company. And you really have to put in the hard yards of working through all that, because only inside the company do you have all the information, but you can benefit from others challenging you. So that's a balance for sure. Never, ever would I don't know.
That sounds like a game from back in college or something, I think,
it
too.
Does.
Yeah.
It does. But I think I've probably hired third parties for almost everything at one point or the other. Is it speeches? Is it events? Is it, other creative campaigns? But but when you have the luxury of resource inside, it's nice to have as much as you can inside for things that you're going to be doing in repetition.
Yeah, I do think, though, sometimes outside perspective, the value in my mind is when an agency, for example, brings other industry expertise, like from other industries that can say, oh, well, we do this amazing thing in the automotive industry or in the manufacturing industry or whatever other that you could learn from and utilize in your, in the beverage industry now. I like the diversity of perspective of sometimes getting an outside voice. So I'm curious if there's a campaign or program or something that you've done that it doesn't have to be at Heineken, it could be in a previous life if you wish, that taught you a great deal, either because it was a huge flop and you've learned a valuable lesson that you really needed to learn, or it was a huge success and you're like, how do we capture that lightning and do that thing again?
Sure. Yeah. The first thing that came to mind is our recent work around carbon neutrality.
Hmm.
You know, the Paris Climate Agreement indicated that we have to stop warming within a 2-degree scenario by 2050. And it's been revised to say, actually, that's really a 1.5-degree warming scenario. We had a lot of deep reflection and listening and learning last summer, trying to figure out where do we want to set our intention and mobilize the organization? How ambitious can we be? Do we want to be? What are the implications of setting those intentions? And as a 157-year-old fourth generation family majority shareholder company, we have, and I really feel this way strongly, I rarely or never seen a company take a long-term view as much as this company, for all the kind of obvious reasons. So we were deciding, do we go for Paris Climate Agreement? Do we go for 2050? Do we go for 2030, 2040? And what we decided to do was commit to carbon neutrality 10 years ahead of the Paris Climate Agreement. By 2040, full value chain. We're the first global brewer to make that commitment.
Wow.
And then carbon neutrality in production, scope 1 and 2, by 2030 in all of our breweries and facilities. And it's a really interesting discussion to have with your employees, with your board, with your community stakeholders, and of course, everyone coming from a different lens. Interestingly, analysts and investors, whereas 10 years ago, they would just be saying, why are you doing that? It's so expensive. Now they're saying, you must be doing this right, and you must be tying it to remuneration, right? And you must be adopting TCFD carbon disclosure reporting, right? And it's kind of nice to have the investors and analysts being a bit more keen and supportive on this.
They're actually pushing you for something that you thought you might have to drag them into.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm so glad, just as a human on this earth, to see that tide change. But at the same time, it does give you that little gut, nervousness, because we do not know exactly how we're going to get there. We have a pretty good roadmap for carbon in production, but the scope 3 carbon, which is your full value chain carbon. So let's talk about the packaging or agriculture, because we're an agricultural product, totally natural product, barley and hops. And we don't control those farms. We don't own those farms. We don't own the ships. We don't own the trucks. So we have to influence those folks to get to carbon neutrality. And how far can we get? How fast? It's a bit of a leap of faith. And at the same time, what an energizer for our people, for prospective employees. All of us are both just beyond over the moon delighted and terrified at the same time. We need to deliver the goods now.
Yeah, that's tough. Well, I'm excited for you, because I think that in some ways there's nothing more fulfilling than having a meaty challenge and being able to, go after it. It gives you a sense of purpose.
Absolutely.
I love it. Okay, we're going to shift to some couple of fun questions to wrap up. These are silly, but some fun questions. All right. So first is there a quote or a movie or a book or a band or that or a team, sports team that inspires you? What's inspiring about it?
The one lately that I've been, there were two. I'll cheat because I never follow rules very well, and share two. There was one during COVID from Rumi that I really thought about a lot. And then there's another one that's an African proverb. The one during COVID for me was, when you're walking through hell, keep walking. And some days were so stressful for all of us. And, I had COVID, my son had COVID, a million crazy things, like all of us had stories. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And some days that's enough.
Yeah, right.
Keep
moving forward. Yeah.
Moving forward. The other one is an African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I recently was actually thinking about that one related to marriage, and how maybe long tenured marriages. My in-laws just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And it's just, it's amazing. It's an
Yeah.
amazing thing to behold. And it's so true in business also that, you look at any of these kind of epic stories, the story of Harry Potter, whatever it is, you have to be in an ecosystem where everyone is, you're moving along and advancing together. Harry did not get there alone. He got there because of Ron and Hermione and Dumbledore and everybody that was helping him along the way.
Well, and consider the alternative. I mean, imagine how lonely it would be if you achieved alone and without others with you on the journey. I mean, it would be a really sad existence, I think.
Indeed. Very true.
I'm curious if there's a brand that you haven't ever worked on that you admire, and what it is you admire about that brand.
Yeah, the one that comes to mind is a beauty brand, and it's just one that I use personally, but it's called Cuddly, and it's French, based in Bordeaux. And in the 90s, I think, this woman, Mathilde, and her partner, they had, I think, vineyards, and then they learned that the grapes and the byproduct of making wine produces some of the most natural, powerful antioxidants that exist out there. And they started making different kinds of lotions and potions and all kinds of things. And what I appreciate is that they were, I think, ahead of their time in the sense that it's all natural and coming from the earth and about natural beauty, not about anything fake or pretentious. But I know when I use their products that they're honest products. And yeah, so I definitely admire them and trust them. And I'm so excited that I now live within driving distance of their winery.
Wow. So the wine is good too, in addition to the lotions and potions.
At some point they have a spa there as well, apparently, where you can get the Emerald City treatment. So I just need a girlfriend to go with me on a road trip, and we'll go to south of France, go to Cuddly.
Nice. Is the brand available in the US or just in Europe?
Yeah, fun fact that I learned this summer. Yes, it's available in the US, and I'm pretty sure it's cheaper in the US because of the exchange. Wow. So I actually loaded up on some things while I was visiting family this summer, because I did the translation of the exchange rate, and it was, I think I saved 20%.
Nice. Nice. Excellent. Well, okay. One more question is, other than your family, which I know gives you great joy, where do you find joy outside of work?
I grew up musical, so I like to play the guitar and sing and play piano and all these good things. I love to cook
and sing karaoke even occasionally, I've heard.
Yeah. Have you heard that? Oh dear. Yes.
I have heard. Yes.
It's a true thing. And I just recently retook up knitting, and during COVID learned how to make candles. And it's always trying new things is a joyful endeavor for me as well. But probably the first thing I would say is music. And then I'm also a reformed aerobics instructor. So there's that.
Nice. So fitness is important too, and somewhere in the chain. And you mentioned, riding a bike in the Netherlands has been a way you can kind of combine the get where you need to go and get a little exercise in while you're at it, and not have to worry about parking and all of that.
It is amazing, and the air is cleaner, less fossil fuel combustion. Every country should look at this model. One of the advantages, though, is this country is very flat. So it really works here because you're not huffing and puffing with your groceries up a giant hill. San Francisco, I'm not sure it would catch on the way that it is here.
Although now that e-bikes have gotten much more democratized in terms of the cost and they're propagated, certainly even here in Atlanta, they're now we just need the roadways to accommodate them better. But certainly, you can even do hills if you're getting a little pedal assist on the way there.
That is the way to do it. We recently tried e-bikes here, and it's dangerous because if you go e-bike, you are never going to go back.
Right. Forget the exercise part of it. You're just going to zoom along, right? Right. Excellent. Well, I'm wondering if there's any question that I didn't ask that you wish that I had asked as part of this conversation.
Well, maybe it's what did you want to be when you grow up? And the reason is because I still don't know.
Wow.
And that's okay. I think a lot of young people, when I get to engage with some of our student, hires and new joiners, they can sometimes get really wrapped up in the ladder and the linear, I had to study this so I could do that. And the truth is you can do whatever you want to do, and you don't ever have to decide. And actually, if you become too precise, unless you're really passionate about a certain thing, if you can remain flexible, there are some extraordinary doors that will open for you that you should walk through.
Absolutely. And I like the way you phrased it. You didn't say, what did you want to be when you grow up? You used the present tense. What do you want to be? So I'm curious, what did you think you might want to be when you were little? And, obviously it may have changed.
Yeah, when I was really little, I was a huge performer. I loved to sing and dance and make people laugh. So it probably would have been more in the entertainment, bringing people joy. That was musical theater type and all of that. And then what you realize is that that's actually similar to business. You're bringing people together, you're energizing them to achieve something, hopefully bring a smile, paint the picture of what's possible, take them on a journey. So I use those skills a lot, and I'm grateful for them.
I love that. All right. Well, Stacey Tank is the Chief Transformation and Global Affairs Officer for Heineken. Thank you so much, Stacey. This was an amazing conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a ton of fun.